Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and in the Hesselson studio, we have former congressman, current assemblyman, current chair of the Steuben County GOP, and temporary U.S. Attorney General, Joe Sempolinski.
I'm not even a lawyer. I have no law degree.
No.
Although there are rumors on the internet that one of the, and I, that's all it is, rumors on the internet, that one of the people they're considering for Attorney General is my former colleague in the House, Lee Zeldin.
Wouldn't that be great?
I mean, I thought it, so when Lee was nominated for EPA administrator, I texted him, congratulations. And one, I wanted to wish him congratulations, and two, I wanted to see
if his number changed.
Well, yeah, is he going to text me back? And half an hour later, he's like, "Thanks, Joe." And I'm like, "Ooh, all right, that's cool."
New number, who this?
No. He right out. Hey, he knew exactly. He said, "Use my name, get back to me." So if having somebody from New York State as the Attorney General, I mean, we've already, he's already in the cabinet,
yeah.
But Attorney General's one of the biggest positions. You're sort of Secretary of State, Attorney General, Treasury, Defense. Those are the the big ones. They're all important, but those are the really sort of original ones. And so that would be a very interesting thing to have somebody. I mean, I wish what we were doing was talking about is re-election campaign for governor.
I know, right?
But Attorney General is pretty good if that's the way it goes. There are other names being floated, and certainly I think the Deputy Attorney General has been named as the acting Attorney General, and there's obviously a confirmation process that has to happen.
That's going to be the tough
Senate.
Part.
Yeah. For instance, it's interesting. It doesn't apply as much to House members, and Lee obviously is a former House member, but you saw, with Senator Mullen.
Yeah.
Is this sort of collegiality within the Senate that senators get a little bit of a.
Well, you saw with Rubio,
right? Rubio. It's so, and I think where that comes from is when you spend a lot of time with people, even if you don't agree with them on everything, it sort of humanizes them.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's members of the state assembly who are Democrats who do not like how I vote,
right?
But if you give them truth serum, they might say I'm a nice fella,
right?
And I think there is that effect. It doesn't apply as much to House members, just because the House and the Senate, Albany, the Assembly and the Senate, we deal with each other all the time. I'm talking with Tom O'Mara and George Borrello almost every day. In Washington, it's a little different, where the House and the Senate are really two separate worlds. But nevertheless, my understanding is Lee's very well respected. If it ends up being him, and again, there are several other names.
It's just interesting that his name was thrown out right from
very quickly. Yeah. So I don't know where that came from or how good that source is, but it certainly became something very quick on the internet. And I spent in 2021 and 2022. I spent an enormous amount of time with Mr. Zeldin.
He was everywhere.
He was everywhere, and in 21, it was more as chairman, and then as a candidate. I'm running for Congress. He's running for governor, and then for the last chunk of his term in Congress was my entire term in Congress, and so we were colleagues in Washington, and so I've certainly spent more time with that guy than anybody else at the higher echelons of the Trump administration, and I have a very positive opinion of the man I wish was my governor right now.
Yeah, right. It would be nice. We're going to talk about the governor's race here in just a moment. I was kind of surprised that Bondi was the second one. Is Trump getting into that habit again where he starts to fire people, you think?
Oh, because
remember the first term.
That's true.
Yeah.
And the president is in a position where if he feels like he needs to make a change, he has the ability to make a change. Members of the cabinet certainly are confirmed by the Senate,
right?
But they serve at the pleasure of the president. Right. Whoever's new has to get confirmed again. But if he feels like there needs to be a change and move somebody to a different position, or change somebody's duties, or give Marco Rubio 20 jobs.
I know it's becoming so funny.
He's the CEO of the United States government,
right?
And it's not a perfect analogy to a corporate setting because there's other things that go on, but it's certainly well within his prerogative to make any changes that he sees fit, and if he feels that Pam Bondi, and if you notice his statement was very positive on her, and we know the president has no hesitation about saying what he thinks about particular individuals, like Bruce Springsteen, not as positive.
Not as positive.
Truths, let's call that.
Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, Jimmy Kimmel. Not as positive. And so I think this may be one of these ones where he feels that there's he needs to mix it up, or there's a better fit somewhere else. Or,
and I even think with that statement, I mean, I guess fired is the right word, but fired almost seems too harsh because it was such a nice statement.
Yeah, he was very positive on her, and she apparently, he talked about some sort of private sector position that she was going to. I don't know if that's affiliated with Trump or not, and my understanding is there's going to be a month-long transition. Like she's not out today. She's still the Attorney General for another month. So that's sort of different from
in
the
past.
bricks, right? So I think there may be some other things sort of going on as to what he wants to do going into the midterm, and obviously we're a year plus into a 4-year term, and your priorities over those 4 years probably adjust, and what you're able to achieve adjusts. So I would say for something like this, a cabinet shakeup, that's something that's well within his prerogative as the head of the executive branch.
Did you see Jasmine Crockett? I know you're a big fan. Did you see her statement?
I think you're a big fan.
I've said that
you
twice.
Keep bringing her up.
I love quoting her. I love quoting her. But her, and we talked about it earlier in the program this morning, she's trying to make it a sexist thing. So she said 2 incompetent women have been fired, but not an incompetent man in Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, I mean,
I think calling anybody incompetent kind
well,
of
that's right.
Point,
I mean, that's pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think, let's put it this way: if 2 people are changed in their position, and if it's random chance, well then, a good chunk of the time 2 of them are gonna be the same gender. That's just something that would be fairly normal within the realm of probability. So I would say that that is something that the left does. They try to make everything about race or gender or some sort of identity group, and conservatives tend to think more, and I tend to think more of people as individuals,
right?
And I'm not saying that demographic characteristics don't matter, but let's judge people based on the positions they take, what they do, and their own individual capabilities, as opposed to immediately ascribing somebody to a particular label or group.
It just seems like such a weak, low-hanging fruit argument. You know what I mean? It's so cliche at this point. No one even takes it seriously.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. But yes, enough about it. You're right. You found me out.
You loved it.
Well,
were you sad she didn't get the nomination?
Yeah. Listen,
because you could have spent the rest of the year
quoting her, and her quotes are. But the problem is anymore. She's went to that. No, she's from the beginning that direction where you can't quote her.
Talarico, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
He's a kind of a weird guy.
Really weird.
We're gonna throw the weird one out.
Yeah.
We didn't make up weird.
No.
The left made up weird.
Yeah.
And it turned out they were kind of weird. And that guy strikes me as kind of weird.
And if I was, I don't want to talk about Crockett, but if I was Crockett, I'd still be upset with Stephen Colbert. It basically cost her the election.
I mean, that was, and then he tried to play it off like it was some sort of Trump thing.
Yeah, which died.
And again,
it was so bad that the media didn't run with it.
And as we talked about, that was not. It was an equal time question. Sure, it was an equal time question. It was an equal time question in a primary, not an equal time question in a Democrat versus Republican general election.
Now, not to jump from Jasmine Crockett to international news, I don't know how that's ever been done. But what did you think about the president's address to the nation?
Yeah, I think what he's trying to do is, sort of explain where he's at and where he's going, right? Which anytime you're in a time of war, especially one that sort of, I think, caught maybe some people in his base a little bit by surprise.
Sure.
Because obviously there's a lot of people within the president's support that are skeptical of foreign intervention, and I don't blame them one bit. So we talked about the president has the role as the CEO of the executive branch, but he also has the role of commander in chief, right? Which and these are constitutional. It's laid out exactly. He is the commander in chief. He is the person that sees that the laws are faithfully executed. It's well within his constitutional purview to have the lead role in those particular areas. And I think he was, trying to make the case to people as to what the successes have been,
right?
Which have been in some cases rather dramatic
Right.
successes of the military campaign, but then also sort of prepare the public for, how long are we expecting this to be? Is there going to be an escalation, which he talked about a little bit? So I think it's important that the president, whoever the president is, when you're in a situation where you're dealing with these sort of life or death issues, is communicative with the world. It's not just the American people, but the world is watching that as best you can without compromising national security or troops in the field or that sort of thing. We're a democratic republic, and we want to have that sort of line of communication with our commander in chief as to what's going on. So I think those type of speeches are good.
And I think my biggest takeaway from it was I'm glad he got the opportunity in front of the nation to talk about putting things into perspective. Because if you watch the nightly news, you would think this is the longest running war we've ever been involved in. Right. You would think we haven't had one victory in it. So when he was able to put it into perspective to the American people, I think that was a very important message that needed to be said by the president.
And I do find it interesting, and we can have discussions about whether a particular military action is appropriate or not, and constitutional questions, all these things. But some of the people that have been so breathlessly worked up about this never said boo when Obama did a lot more.
I know.
As far as who he was bombing and how often he was bombing people.
I remember how upset I would get. I don't want to name names, but locally, I remember you were around at that time, where there were so many George W. Bush protests, anti-war protests all the time.
Right.
And then Obama got in, and everybody was okay with war all of a sudden.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
he was bombing whoever he wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how they pick and choose. Just like we don't see the protests in the street in support of the Iranian people fighting the regime.
Right. Yeah. And that's, these people have been brutalized.
Yeah.
And not in the distant past, very recently. Mm-hmm. So, we're talking about tens of thousands of dead. Yeah. Let's just say protests in America.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with whatever protests are going on. But you sort of drive by and they say, all right, you can say what you want.
Yeah.
You just get gunned down in other parts of the world. Yeah. So it sort of reminds you, it's ironic that the person that some people say is apparently a king,
right?
You can go out and say whatever you want about him. You can go on the television and say whatever you want about him. You can go on the street and say whatever you want about him.
Yeah.
That sort of proves he's not a king, right?
Yeah, I know.
So
we got a lot of comments coming in. We'll read them when we return. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. Well, Frankly Speaking, Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. All right, comments. Given the nature of the radical Iranians, I highly doubt that children are given a choice of whether or not they want to join. That was in reference to a story where the recruiting is as young as 12 years old.
Oh yeah, I know that's not voluntary.
Yeah,
that's not go down to your local recruiter and sign up.
No.
In places like Iran.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would concur with the viewer.
I'm all for the loser Kamala running for president. It would ensure a Republican win, because she said she couldn't stand watching. She didn't watch Trump's speech to the nation.
She was not a strong candidate.
No, but doesn't it seem like she's making moves to go that direction again?
And right now she has the advantage of name ID, right? Yeah. Whoever ran has this name ID.
120 whatever billion or whatever.
Yeah.
1.2 billion.
If I would put it this way, if she decided to run again, I'm not saying she would be the Democratic nominee, but because of all that investment, all that effort that was put in, she would immediately be in the top tier pretty quickly. Polling pretty clearly shows that. And the point that the person's making is that should she be, again, the nominee, you're probably looking at another Republican president. I also concur with the viewer on that particular assessment. But I don't view a scenario where we end up with a President Harris.
I do see Kamala looking at those numbers, even though not putting two and two together. We spent $1.5 billion in 2 weeks. Of course she should have name recognition. Right. I think her ego tells her that, they realize now I was right all along.
Yeah, I don't think the people are out there. I don't think even Democrats, there's like this clamoring for
There wasn't
her.
when she got it.
That's right.
I mean,
it's sort of an artifact of that money being spent. So, yeah, she would be in the top tier, but she wouldn't be a prohibitive favorite. No. I don't think she immediately clears out, Gavin Newsom or Shapiro or Buttigieg or any of these other folks. The problem they've got is there isn't like a clear dominant front runner. So they're going to have a very competitive primary where I think on the Republican side, my assessment of the situation is if the vice president chooses to run for president, unless something really bizarre happens, he's going to be the nominee. If he doesn't, and the Secretary of State chooses to run for president, then it's probably going to be him. Like those two are clear of the field by a mile. So the only way there would be, like, I would think, either, again, we're a long way out from this, so things change very rapidly in politics. We're an eternity away from the next presidential primaries, but it's a much more sort of orderly succession at this point on the Republican side, and unless for some reason J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio wake up one day and decide they don't want to be president, then it would become sort of chaotic. But I don't envision that. What might very well happen is you might end up with two terms of Vance Rubio, and then maybe 2 terms of Rubio. Oh my goodness, what if we had 5 Republican terms? But I think you have sort of, and I'm not saying it's going to happen this way, but you have sort of this obvious solution, which is everybody moves up one slot, and Secretary of State becomes the vice president becomes the president, and
then when Rubio takes over president, then it's Barron, Trump, VP.
That's right. You got a whole scheme, right?
We got the future. I'll figure it out. All right, comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Joe. Always a pleasure. Oh, that's very nice. Right. Another comment, Joe. I like that.
That sounds positive. Unless it's like Jeb.
How much did they spend for that? That? Jeb! Exclamation mark. Mark says,
I will not ask anyone to clap.
Oh yeah, that's oh my gosh. But no, here's a different question. Question for Joe. Good morning to all. Joe, what's the status of Staten Island seceding from New York City? And when are you going to get the ball rolling to make upstate the 51st state?
Yeah.
Joe?
So what's interesting with that is there are processes for that. We have had states split. The most obvious one people think of is West Virginia, which split during the Civil War from Virginia. Maine was part of Massachusetts, and for a long time, and in the early 1800s split off. So there are legal constitutional mechanisms to split states. That would be the sort of second part of the question, which is the Southern Tier, or upstate New York, or would you join Pennsylvania or whatever. There's all sorts of different ways you can look at it. The catch is some of the steps involve convincing New York City Democrats that it's in their interest, because it would be basically, it would have to go through the Assembly and the Senate. It would be a constitutional amendment. It would have to be an intervening election. It would have to go through the Assembly and the Senate again. And then there would be a referendum.
It's not happening.
And that's the first parts of the problematic parts. The referendum statewide, and then Congress would have to approve it. Now, Staten Island's different because Staten Island does not seek to leave the state of New York, but there are people on Staten Island that wish they were their own city, separate from the city of New York. That would only need to be a state law. You wouldn't need to have a state constitutional amendment. And actually, Staten Island, if it became its own city, would be the second biggest city in New York. It would be bigger than Buffalo. It would be bigger than Rochester or Yonkers or any of these other top cities. So you're not talking about people talk about it as like the smallest borough, because it is. It's much smaller than the other boroughs, but we're still talking about double, not quite, sort of almost on the par of double the size of the city of Buffalo. So it could. Let's put it this way: if I lived in Staten Island, I would not want to be part of the rest of the city of New York. And I find it interesting when I talk to my colleagues from Staten Island. So there are 4 assembly members that represent Staten Island. 3 of the 4 are Republican. And for a while in the chamber, I sat next to a gentleman who is from Staten Island, Mr. Tanusis, who's also the party chairman for Richmond County, which is Staten Island. And they are, and I think this is correct, I've heard this described, so I didn't make this up, they are sort of the upstate of New York City, or the upstate of downstate, where we have a lot more in common than we probably should, given how different Staten Island is. It's still a city, and they still sort of walk and talk and act like people from New York City as far as sort of their culture and sort of the a little aggressive and these sort of things. But they're just as frustrated with the 4 bigger boroughs as everybody up here is. So so I don't have a say in the sense of I'm not from Staten Island, but I would have a say in the sense that somehow that came to the floor of the state assembly. And again, if I was them, I would want to split too. And if somehow magically I had a vote on that, I would certainly vote to let them be their own city of Staten Island or city of Richmond or whatever they would call themselves. And they are certainly big enough that they would be a self-sustaining city on their own.
How about this? It's always a wonderful morning when I get to watch two of my favorite people sharing their thoughtful insights and analysis on Frankly Speaking. One, Mayor John Buckley.
Is that Buckley?
Yeah.
Oh,
and you're going to be on his show, The Pulse.
I am going to be on his show. We're going to tape that a little bit later, and the mayor has a great show talking about things in and around Hornell, and also he talks about statewide stuff on the show. And so there are several fine programs on radio and television, of which I am a regular guest. One of them is hosted by Mr. Buckley, and one of them is hosted by Mr. Acom, and there are others, and I enjoy talking to the folks. So shout out to the mayor. Yes. He's doing a great job.
Doing a great job. That's on WLEA, and that's Saturday at 1 and Sunday at 1. Yeah. I might just be on the show next week.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, you sometimes. You're like his, I was going to say Ed McMahon, but you're more like Joan Rivers. When Joan Rivers used to sub in for Johnny Carson.
So someday Buckley's going to hate me. And then what ended up happening with...
And then Jay Leno's going to take it.
Exactly. So that's a mess. Yeah. So we got a great question coming up, but I want to take a break. Mark writes, and we'll just keep people hanging. What do you think of Bruce Blakeman not receiving equal or matching funding for his campaign?
I'm angry about this.
Yeah. So stay with us. We're going to keep you hooked. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, let's see if I got it right. Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. There we go. Some comments from.
Still love Phil.
I do, of course. Well, it is Friday. Is one comment came in from it.
Usually right.
It's Fridays with Phil.
And we did remiss. Wish everybody a very meaningful Good Friday today.
Yes, and Easter coming up on Sunday.
Yeah.
Good morning, guys. Drove 25 hours back from Florida after the moon launch. Made it back 2 a.m. Glad I woke in time to see the show's last half hour with Joe.
Artemis 2 and
sent photos.
Frank. Yeah. I
do I still have it?
I think the space program is just super neat.
So that's his pictures.
That's cool.
And then
I did go to a satellite launch.
Did you really?
We were. This was before my wife and I had kids, but we were in Cocoa Beach, and we realized that they were going to launch one of these satellites, and we were watching. I've never seen anything like it. If you ever can do it, go do it. Like it is, even if you're miles away, it is impressive. Like you don't have to be right up at, at the Space Center. You can be sort of anywhere on the Space Coast, as they call it, and watch from any beach, and it's amazing. So I think it's great. I've been following pretty closely the Artemis 2 mission. Their lunar burn, it was successful last night, so they're on the way to the moon right now on a free return trajectory, so they don't even have to touch it, just let it go and come back. And I saw that their Outlook wasn't working and their toilet wasn't working, so they're just like all of us, which is cool.
I thought the Outlook thing was weird to me because I didn't, you think about that. I mean, the toilet, you fix that right away. The Outlook,
priorities.
It's like they had to call IT and you had to log me in to fix it. Or something.
Yeah, you're on your way to the moon. You're like, what's my password?
I know.
Why do I have to authenticate? What is it? So I think it's fantastic.
Me too.
I think it's great for America. To be leading on this. I think it's certainly technological innovation, but it's also a national security issue. To be in a position where we're able to have this capability, and so I've always been, ever since I was a little boy, sort of a sucker for the space program, and I'm looking forward. And my understanding is the current plan, this has changed a little bit, but is Artemis 3 will be sort of testing in Earth orbit, the mechanisms of getting to the excursion module, whatever, and then Artemis 4, hopefully in about 2 years, puts Americans back on the moon.
That'd be great.
And the beginning of the construction of a lunar base as a stepping stone to colonizing Mars.
Jack says he actually felt the sound after it was out of sight, even.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's one of the things when you see, because obviously light travels faster than sound.
Right.
So if you're a few miles away, you see it.
Yeah.
wait, and then I have never seen anything like a launch, and I highly recommend it to anyone that is a neat, when you're on your Florida vacation and you see that they're launching something, go down there and watch it. It is well worth your time.
I want to mention, because we were talking about Blakeman and we talked about the assembly. So the budget, obviously, I like that you, Phil, O'Mara, you can send press releases a couple days early to say we're not going to make the budget. You don't have to wait until April 1st.
It's funny because it was the morning of the 31st, and my chief of staff had written up a press release, and it says, State Mrs. Sempolinski mad State Mrs. Budget. And I'm like, change it to will in this budget. The budget's tomorrow. But we knew because we had already done the extender and what have you. But yes, it was becoming increasingly obvious that we were not anywhere close. And here's what I have heard. And again, I'm not talking with Kathy Hochul directly, but if you get a Democrat member and you talk to them, you can sometimes get something out of it. If you had said to me 3 months ago, do you think the budget's going to be on time? I would have said, could. It might be. It could be close. If you had said to me a week ago, how long you think it's going to go, I would say it's going to be late, but it's not going to be as late as last year.
No. Now you don't know.
I think it could be as late as last year or more.
Andrew Stewart-Cousins said, what was it, yesterday, I think it came out, that we are at the beginning of the middle.
Beginning of the middle. They usually use these at the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end sort of things. And all indications that I've heard from Democrats that are willing to talk to me, off to the side, is they're not even close.
Not even close.
And this is going to drag on for a while. One of the big issues is energy issue, where the governor, in my opinion, doesn't want to make changes that are nearly significant enough, but does want to make some changes to the CLCPA, the climate law. And, of course, the far left has dug in against that. So we're in this happens a lot over the last couple of years where the far left is completely bonkers. Mm-hmm. Kathy Hochul is slightly less bonkers, but nowhere near where you want her to be.
Right. Probably could cave.
But is a little bit. So you want her to sort of get some of that, but you really want her to go about 5 times further. So because they're both not doing great. But you end up having these sort of inter-Democrat fights about just sort of how much to change anything, if at all, and what have you. But the big issue apparently is energy. There are some other issues, and what also tends to happen is when the negotiations drag out, new issues pop up. Mm-hmm. Things that you thought were settled suddenly get re-injected back into the budget process. So currently, we are home for the religious holidays for Passover and Easter. Mm-hmm. And so we will return. The Assembly scheduled to go back into session, and Senate too. Both of them are scheduled back into session Tuesday morning. So I will drive up Monday evening. And at that point, I don't know. I would assume that they're not going to accomplish anything over Easter.
No.
So we're probably going to do what's called an extender, which is you fund the government for a few days. You basically meet payroll and keep doing what you're doing. We're currently on a 7-day extender that expires on Tuesday. What we did for the equivalent week last year was on Tuesday we did a 2-day extender and then came back on Thursday.
Yeah.
My wife loved
sure.
spring break. So, but I wouldn't be shocked if that's what we do. We sort of do every few days. Just enough to keep the government functioning while negotiations proceed. And I won't know that until at least Monday, if not Tuesday, as we're going into session. Like, how long is this extender for? It's become, sadly, business as usual in Albany. Hochul I believe, has never had an on-time budget.
No, I don't think so.
Nor does she really care about having an on-time budget.
She's actually pretty cocky about it.
Yeah. She's sort of flexing.
We've got to get it right.
Yeah.
But it's never on time and it's never right.
Yeah, so right, exactly. Yeah. And then she claims some victory. That's why I point out she never wants to go as far, where she'll raise an issue that I agree with the issue, whether it's changing bail reform or changing discovery reform or changing the CLCPA.
Right.
And then she'll fight tooth and nail and get like the most de minimis, meaningless change and then claim victory.
Then there's a press conference and she's...
And you're sort of going, but you didn't really do much. So it's again, it's Democrats I disagree with fighting with other Democrats that I disagree with,
right,
in maybe a slightly different way.
But you had a great point in your press release. How is it that it's one party rule?
Right.
And you've got 3 Democrats negotiating together,
right,
and you still can't get it on
right.
time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not like you don't know that April 1st is coming. The fiscal year runs from April 1st to March 31st every year. It's been doing that for as long as everybody's been alive.
Right.
And it's coming.
Yeah.
And again, it's Democrats in all 3 leadership positions, one party control, and you can't figure it out.
Yeah.
So our role in the Republicans is to raise points, to try and push it further in our direction as best you can. Point out the things you agree with, point out the things you disagree with, make sure the public knows what's going on, and we can make some adjustments on the margins to things. But it is a frustrating time of year in Albany, where it's sort of hurry up and wait. And we talk about Mr. Palmisano. Mr. Palmisano now as ranker of Ways and Means. If you tune in on Tuesday morning, when we do the extender, you'll see Mr. Palmisano leading the debate on the extender. He'll debate the chairman of Ways and Means, Mr. Pretlow, and that will be the debate on that will be Palmisano versus Pretlow.
It's funny you say that because we have Phil's been sending us in some videos, and we got this comment from a viewer. When Phil is talking, it bugs me that the Democrats sitting behind him are clearly not paying attention. One is chatting away, picking his nose, and so on. So I wonder if Joe experiences the same. And a lot of people got mad at that the first time we showed a video. People are playing games on their cell phones.
Yeah, I mean, we had one. So when I posted the speech I gave on Down Syndrome Awareness Day, which was very well received, both by Republicans and Democrats, talking about my daughter. And you could see some of the people in the background, and my wife was watching it, and it was always, are they like laughing or something? And I'm like, no, because I knew I had talked to those members afterwards, and behind me are all Republicans. They're like, no, the one guy's trying to keep from crying, like because we're it's a very emotional moment. So it was, sometimes you don't always know what they're doing back there. So it's you got to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. I, to the best of my ability, try to be in my chair and listening, and sometimes I learn things, and sometimes when we bring up a bill, I'm thinking I'm going to vote one way and I vote another way. And sometimes I'm leaning a particular way, and I listen, make sure I'm sort of understanding the bill correctly. And I think that's the prudent way to represent my constituents, is with thoughtfulness and judge ideas based on their merits.
Comment from Ken. He says, this is about Blakeman.
Okay.
Dems rigging the system, cheating and lying to stay into power, to quote Biden. Come on, man. That's no secret. It's all they have. So thank you.
I think it's a whole thing's a bunch of malarkey.
Yeah, I know. Man, I don't miss that. The whisper and the lie. Like, his cadence was something, even when comedians picked on it, bothered me. Something about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right, we got to take a break because we still got a lot of local issues to get to. But did you know, Joe, I haven't had you on since, this is hard to believe, we celebrated 3 years on the air the other day.
Can
you believe that?
I can't believe it. 3 years of the TV program.
Yeah, TV program.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like 3 years.
It doesn't. And Wednesday,
I guess it would be 3 years.
Yeah, because Wednesday of this week was a 2-year anniversary when we went 2 hours. Because remember, I started with 1
That's right. You started with 1, and then the people demanded we need more Frank.
I know, and then they wanted 3.
And the gracious people at the Fox Network and Big Fox and Hesselson's gave you another hour of Frank. Just the people. I don't know. Why not 3 or 4?
3 or 4. Let's make it the whole day.
It's going to be 24. The Frank channel.
Oh, my gosh.
The Frank Network.
The least popular Roku network or whatever. All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, getting ready to wrap up with Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. Comment from a viewer: in addition to 3 or 4 hour show, you should also simulcast with radio. Yeah, we'll do the whole thing.
I remember back in the day, the radio. I didn't have to wear a suit.
No,
for the radio.
A lot
show.
of people complain about that.
Yeah.
But that was 3 hours, and then we had the rebroadcast. So it was actually 6 hours of Frankly Speaking back then.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
anyway,
right.
So how is the petition process? Oh. Monday's the last day to hand them in, right?
So the ballot access process, as we talk a lot about in the show, is a petitioning process, which is very onerous, more onerous than any other state.
Oh my gosh, you forget.
Meticulous. There was a 72-hour period last week where I just spent those 3 days moving legal-sized pieces of paper from one part of the southern tier to another.
Yep.
got to pick them up and take them over to here, deliver them this one, pick them up for myself.
And then someone gives you this one, you got to take it back.
Well, because I'm doing a petition drive to get on the ballot. Again, thousands of people signed my petition.
That's great. I saw that picture. You did good.
It was fantastic.
How many did you have to get?
My numbers for Republican is 500. For Conservative is 96.
Okay.
And I had over 4 times,
Wow,
well over 4 times what I need. So literally thousands of people signed for Republican. I was more than double what I needed for Conservative. So we're in a great position. But also I'm chairman, so I'm moving around. I'm making sure Jeff Spalding gets his sheets that come in a little late in local positions. So the last day to collect was yesterday. But the last day
to get signatures,
to collect a signature. But because of Passover falling during the filing window, in respect to the Jewish community, they extended the filing period.
Okay.
So you can't collect after yesterday, but you could file today, or you could file Monday.
Okay.
Again, out of respect for religious holidays that fell during the filing period. So. Well, we won't know for sure until, and again, you can postmark it Mondays. You really don't know until Tuesday, who's all running for every position. But we did very well. Things look very strong. Our big one that's always a catch is the county-wide positions, because you need 1,000. Like, as we just discussed, I only need 500 to run for the state legislature, which is a significantly larger district than Steuben County.
Yeah.
And you need 1,000. So Jeff Spalding.
How many does Langworthy need?
1,250.
So he needs 250 more than our coroner.
Coroner, yes, and his district is more than 7 times bigger.
Yeah.
So that's always the catch. And Mr. Spalding and his wife, did a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
And the committee did a lot of work, and I think he ended up filing with about 1,500.
Oh, good for him.
Which for coroner is a big number.
People feel so bad that he has to get 1,000 that I think they're willing to take his out more. Like I know I do.
Oh my God, that's the one. When I go out, because that's not people sort of know some of the things that are farther up the ballot. They go, "What's this?" I go, "Listen, the guy needs 1,000 signatures. He's running for coroner. He's a former police chief. He's well qualified." Oh, okay. Then people will once you tell them a little bit, they'll sign pretty easily.
Yeah, because I know sometimes you can tell when a person opens the door that they don't want to sign. I mean, they will sign, but you might get one out of them.
Now, sometimes people open the door and then they realize I'm not asking for any money.
Right.
I'm not selling anything.
And
then they get real happy.
Yeah.
So
it was a tough year weather-wise.
It was a tough year weather-wise.
And especially for the candidates that waited the last minute and needed those last votes, because this last week was a washout.
It was real tough weather-wise. And this is why it shouldn't be in March.
No.
March is one of the goofiest weather months of the year around here. When we used to collect them in June.
Yeah.
There were reasons why I had to move back, but I would put it in like April myself. There's got to be a solution to that. I mean, March is too dynamic a weather month.
I mean, in the window, we had snow, rain, one really nice day, which I think you could, it's almost like trick or treat. You could see so many people taking out their petitions because that was a one nice day. But yeah, this was a tough year. But if people want to get involved, because as we've said before, I mean, the petitions are over, but this is kind of the nitty gritty right now.
Well, now we're going to get into knowing who's on the ballot, who's got races. We already know that there's going to be for Nick Langworthy, there will be a contested general election. Right. So supporting him. There's discussion of people running against Senator O'Mara. There's certainly people running against Assemblyman Friend, looks like I may have an opponent. So if the folks that
really
we'll there's somebody who has filed, and we'll see. That hasn't filed petitions yet. They filed campaign finance, so we'll see if they file their petitions. So if you like the team that we have, Mr. Friend, Mr. Palmisano, Mr. O'Mara, myself, Ms. Bailey, up in northern part of Steuben County, Claudia and Nick. They're all running for re-election. It doesn't look like any of us have any primary situations. There's a consensus within the Republican Party that this is a good team.
Yeah.
I would agree with that consensus wholeheartedly, and I would encourage everybody in the Elmira media market to support our state legislative and congressional delegations, and especially when it turns out some of them are going to have contested general elections, and I certainly support every one of those people. All 5 state legislators and both members of Congress, and we need to work to get them elected. There are certainly other races, some local races in Steuben County. There's some local races, obviously, in Chemung County, and in other places as well. So if you have a candidate that you feel passionately about, I strongly encourage you to go knock doors for them in the summer and the fall, and donate to them and get the word out. And then, of course, overarching all of that is the gubernatorial race.
Yes.
And we talked a lot about Mr. Blakeman, but he is the captain of the team this year. And the better Bruce Blakeman does, the better everybody else does, and vice versa.
Yep.
The better the local team does, those are votes that Mr. Blakeman doesn't need to get in New York City.
Right.
So we need to make sure that we get our entire Republican ticket elected from Mr. Blakeman all the way down to our local offices.
Here's a question. You always sometimes get some from left field that you're not expecting.
Yeah.
Speaking of weather, how about the race, meaning the NASCAR race, taking place in May on Mother's Day? What are your thoughts?
Is there a concern that you might get
snow?
Well, we do get snow in May.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that we'd have it.
Yeah.
Like, move it around the calendar. I understand that it is not the traditional spot for it.
Yeah.
It used to be later in the season. But I think Watkins Glen International is such a wonderful asset to this region. It is the largest single-day sporting event in New York State, is the NASCAR race up at Watkins Glen. Dawn, who I've known forever, Dawn Berlew, is the head of the track. She's going to be on the
program next week, I think.
I'll tell her I said hi.
I will.
She came up to Albany a few weeks ago.
I saw that, yeah.
Because we were talking about promoting, it was a bipartisan thing, promoting sports racing in New York State as an industry. Because you have all these local small tracks, dirt tracks, that are economic drivers in small communities. So I've known Dawn forever, and she's doing a great job at the track. And so I think NASCAR is a huge asset to our community, and I'm so pleased that this has been a track that has been very consistently selling their tickets, and there's a lot of support in the community for NASCAR.
It's such a fan favorite too,
yeah,
because it's such a neat. I mean, there's so few road courses by any.
Yeah, right. It's a unique thing on the circuit. So not unique, but it's not your standard just turn left.
Exactly. All right. The wrap up. Mark says, "Great show, very informative. Have a great Easter weekend."
Yeah. So a blessed Easter to everybody
to
out there.
everyone.
Yeah.
Wishing you and Joe S. and family a happy Easter weekend. Enjoy and be safe. Those are nice.
That's nice.
How about ending on that note?
Yeah. Well, Easter's a great way to end it. So I'm a Catholic and somebody who takes Easter seriously, and Good Friday today seriously.
Yeah.
I wish all my fellow Christians and everyone out there a very meaningful Good Friday and Easter Sunday.
Well, Joe, thanks so much for being on the program. Thanks for putting up with me calling you Phil, for not storming off and leaving.
No.
Joe, we'll have to do this again soon because, like you said, the petitions will be settled here pretty soon, so we'll have a little more to talk about.
Yeah, we'll know exactly who's running for what.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. Joe, have a great Easter. Tell the family the same, okay?
Likewise.
All right. That's it. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great Easter, everyone.